We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.
So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder.
Hello, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. Today is the 13th of November in the year of our Lord 2022. I am your host, Forrest Valkai, and joining me today is the fantastic Jim Barrows. How are you doing today, Jim? I'm super excited about it, man. I can't hear a word you're saying, so I hope that that's a problem on somebody's.
No, that's
there we
my
go.
side. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I
was just playing along.
Yeah.
I was reading your lips. I was like, yeah, hopefully this fixes itself soon. I want to let everybody know that the Atheist Experience is a product of the atheist community of Austin. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. I'm super excited to get into the calls today. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular one that you want to start with?
No, not at all.
Okay, so I want to start with caller number 6 here. We've got Victoria. Pronouns are she, they, calling in from Chile, I believe. Victoria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right.
How about you?
Okay, so I see here you wanted to talk about early religion. Did it help humans survive early on? Did it arise from later from more complex brains? Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. I'm very excited to be on the show, man.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah.
So,
I actually
do
gonna
you
believe
want to
you.
expound on that a little bit more? Tell me more about what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I thought basically, now I'm getting nervous. Jeez. I thought if religion is so ingrained in our society from basically forever, did it actually begin before like Homo sapiens, so to speak? Like, was it something so old and so ingrained that it's sort of something like the burials that elephants do, and sort of helped organize early societies into larger things?
Yeah, it's hard to say because like what happens a lot when you study like paleoanthropology or really just bioanthropology in general, when you're looking at like early humans and where we came from and what makes us, there's this old joke that, you know, anytime an archaeologist doesn't know what something is or what it's for, it's religious, right? Any kind of ceremonial thing, any kind of weird thing that makes no real sense, we can chalk it up to a religious thing. Here's this building that we don't know what it is, probably a temple, right? Like, and of course this isn't always true, but like this, the problem is there's a huge history of like ceremonial and symbolic behaviors in humans, even in other species of humans. But we don't, like, how could we possibly say what is or is not a religion? When you look at like religious history, and I'm going to botch this a lot because I'm not a scholar of religion. I just, this is a thing that I've read about, but I'm not, an expert in this field by any means. Like, if I remember right, you tend to see like it starts with like the sun as like a major religious figure because that's light and warmth and safety and food and all this. And then later on, you tend to see gods revolving around things like fertility and hunting, bringing food to the table and making more of ourselves. And then you get into more specific things about like the gods of specific conflicts, emotions, events, things like that. And so like, it's reasonable to say that like early humans being so good at noticing patterns and so good at trying to find meaning where there isn't meaning. Humans have a really, really bad habit of that kind of that patternicity and whatnot. And so it makes sense to say that we might have started off thinking there must be some sort of causal agent for things like that. Sure. We see all sorts of really cool ceremonial and ritualistic behaviors. Neanderthals wore makeup, played music, buried dead ceremonially, wove like shawls of flowers to bury dead in. Like there's a whole system there. Like there's a lot. But as far as like actually calling that religion, that's a stretch. I don't know if we could do that just because how would we test that possibly? You know what I mean?
And
Yeah, that's
two,
fair. That's very fair.
And we've got some evidence too that, like in fishing societies, those societies that go further out from shore to fish tend to be have more ritual around doing that and attempting to catch fish because you have lower odds of catching fish. So anywhere where you have high odds of catching fish, we don't have these types of luck rituals to try and influence or to otherwise control random events. And I would suspect that while this is something we see in fishing societies, that you would also see this in hunting societies and other societies as well. The more random the events, the more we're going to try and control them. Look at what we do and look at our current society. Everything we do is about controlling the weather around us, and we do that by building houses. We try and control as many of those random events as we possibly can. And I don't see that, that seems to be a human trait. And so now we control it with technology. If you don't have technology, you control it with ritual, or at least attempt to. Sports figures are much the same way, right? With lucky underwear and lucky this, and, getting into the frame of mind. That is also not a bad thing to do if you're going to go hunt dangerous animals, is to get into the right frame of mind, and rituals help you do that as well. So I don't think it's a far leap for ritual to turn into religion.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point you just bring up. That you actually said two things that are really important. One of them being, the survivorship of it. Talking about catching fish and protecting from the weather. Like anytime there's any kind of an external stimulus that could be dangerous, like you're gonna want to look for a causal agent behind it. You're gonna want to try to remove that selection pressure from you. And I think the psychological phenomenon of like trying desperately to have control over everything kind of plays in there. Also, when we talk about humans seeing patterns from random stimuli, this is a thing called pareidolia. I'm probably saying that wrong, but like you have this phenomenon of us seeing meaningful messages and like significant things in like completely random data, completely random stimulus. It kind of plays into that confirmation bias. You know what I mean? You win the slot machine one time out of 5,000, but that one time that you won it, you had your foot in this particular way. So that means that's what did it, right? That has to be the thing that made the connection. And so surely somebody out there, banged a stick on a rock right before a thunderstorm and then decided, all right, man, every time we need rain, I'm going to hit this rock. And all the times that it doesn't work are erased from your mind because the 3 times that it did work meant that God was on your side. You know what I mean? So yeah, as far as like helping us to survive, which was your original call. And I realize I've talked all around that, but not actually addressed that. As far as helping humans survive, I could definitely see how like a false positive, if you hear a rustling in the bushes and you assume it's wind and it's actually a tiger, you get eaten. But if you assume it's a tiger and it's actually wind, you're fine. You know what I mean? Having that false positive of saying like, I need to do XYZ thing and make life better for myself and hunt better and all these things. I could see an argument where that could be helpful. But I don't know. Like it's really tough to really draw a line on when that happened or how it happened or where it happened.
Yeah, because so many of the aspects of religion could definitely be survival traits.
Yeah.
And then you have, the more you can get people to sacrifice for a cause or a person, the harder it is for them to realize that person or cause may be false, or may just be leading them on. And so when you start combining all of these things, it's not hard to get people to all of a sudden build a religion. And then you start adding in storytelling and all of a sudden, all the components in human behavior for religion are there. So I think that it's not wrong. I don't think either one of us would be wrong to say that religion does help us to survive, and we wouldn't be wrong to say that religion doesn't help us to survive. Simply because there are aspects of religion that you can make both those arguments for, to a large degree.
I think there's also.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I think there's also something to be said for like the emotional aspect as well. I was just thinking about it more, and I remember like, you know, when you have like you have a bunch of people in a drum circle and like doing this whole like ritual thing, you get into it, like you get really excited. There's a reason why like prayer and worship leaders and things like that are so successful, because they know how to manipulate somebody's emotions with the music and the lights and the song and then this and that, and get people to have a euphoric experience. That builds community. That is strong bonding. That's something that you could whip somebody up into a war. That's somebody you could like rally somebody up in a shitty situation and give them hope. That's something like this. The emotional aspect of it is something that you really, you know, wouldn't take into account with most other animals, but like, it's really, I think it's worth thinking about a lot here. And the more I think about it, the more I see a significant benefit there, having somebody who could like lead people in like an emotional connection. That's kind of cool. And Victoria, we've been talking a long time. What do you think about all of that?
I basically think like, what you said at the end there about rallying larger groups of people, that's mostly what I was thinking in the beginning. But now that I am, how do you say, now that I see like how it can help so much more with survival in terms of like basically being suspicious of everything, like superstitious of everything, that seems also really helpful even if it isn't like a religion.
Yeah, man. It's just I don't know.
Like,
I think
very informative.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for calling in. Is there anything else you wanted to ask us really quick before we move on?
Keep doing what you're doing.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria. Have an awesome rest of your day.
No problem.
What a lovely lady. Very nice. Well, that was fun. Chile's awesome. Also, I should have said earlier, one of my favorite species of arthropods from there. You got Chile and the rose-haired tarantulas, Grammostola rosea, I think it is. Freaking adorable spiders, dude. They're real cool, nomadic dudes. Hey, if you're watching this and you like what we do and you'd like to support us and help us do more of these things, there's a few ways you can support the Atheist Experience and the ACA in general. First of all, you can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. You just click the join button down there below the video, and that'll give you access to special chat emojis. If you're in the chat right now and you have those special emojis, feel free to show them off and get people excited about them so that they'll do that. Also, the Atheist Experience is just one of the many shows that are put on by the ACA. So make sure to check out the other shows as well. There's Secular Sexuality on Thursday starting at 7 p.m. Central. There's Truth Wanted, which airs Fridays also at 7 p.m. Central. Then we have the Sunday shows, which are Talk Heathen at 1 p.m. Central. The Nonprofits, which is on right before this one at 3 p.m. Central. And all of that is also, you can support us on Patreon. You just go to tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. So those are all different ways that you can help out with everything that we do here and help us do more of these things if you're a fan of the show. And if you're not a fan of the show, don't do any of those things. Or do those things to spite us. That would be fine as well. Just get back at us and own the atheist libs by donating as much as possible and putting a mean thing in the chat as you donate. With that, we're going to move on. Jim, do you have a particular call you were looking at? Because I haven't looked at the screen for a minute.
You know what? We should probably do caller one.
Caller on line one is King, pronouns he, him in Alaska, looking for a response to Anthony Flew became a theist before dying. King, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Pretty happy. So give me a little more detail here. Who is Anthony Flew and why did he become a theist? Like, what are you talking about here?
I'm surprised you never heard of Anthony Flew. He was supposed to be a prominent atheist philosopher. And I have a friend who's a born-again Christian, and I've been having this debate with him about the existence of God. and he brought up the case of Anthony Flew, who was supposed to be a famous atheist, but toward the end of his life, he changed his mind and became a theist, or actually a deist.
So I just looked
And,
up Anthony Flew on the Wikipedia machine. As a British philosopher belonging to the analytic and evidentialist schools of thought, worked in the philosophy of religion. He was known as a strong advocate for atheism, arguing that we should presuppose atheism until evidence suggesting a God surfaces. I'm into that. He criticized the ideas of life after death, free will, deference to the problem of evil, and the meaningfulness of the concept of God. I'm into that too. And it looks like he was in some humanist manifesto too. And so you're saying that at the end of his life, he changed his mind?
Yeah, that's what this person told me. He says that because of that, and also he brought up C.S. Lewis was supposed to be, before he became a Christian and wrote all those books like Christianity, something or other, I forget the exact title, and said that he was an atheist and then he converted to becoming a theist or a Christian after hearing the word of God or something to that effect.
Well,
So
let me ask you
I wasn't
this.
quite sure how to respond to him, to this friend of mine who's a Christian, because we've been having this ongoing argument about whether God exists or not.
What does it matter that an individual atheist converts to Christianity at some point? What is it about that makes that important?
Well, apparently, according to this friend of mine, it proves that God exists, because apparently God was able to convince this atheist to believe in God.
So what were the reasons that either C.S. Lewis or Anthony Flew became a theist? What were the reasons?
According to this friend of mine, apparently they found evidence for God.
Well,
according
what
to
was
an
his
interview, Flew said that he converted to deism in 2004. So he was born in 1923. He would have been 81. He converted his atheism, citing growing empathy with the insight of Einstein and other noted scientists that there had to be an intelligence behind the integrated complexity of the physical universe. So basically, the argument from complexity. He saw that the universe was very complex. He saw the universe was very complex, and therefore it must have an intelligent mind design behind it. Is that pretty much the whole thing?
That's what it sounds like. Maybe I should have looked up Wikipedia first before I called you guys.
Well, I'm checking a few. I just typed into Google, why did Anthony Flew become a deist? And here, the scientific evidence convinced him of the origin of life required intelligent design. What evidence would be there? Because the thing is, this is not a this was in 2004, and today in 2022, I still get confronted with this all the time. You know, how can you explain this, that, or the other thing? And it's still not a convincing argument.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Some way of explaining to this guy why there really is no evidence for God.
Yeah, and the thing is like,
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm thinking like this was in, first of all, this was in 2004 when we had some good evidence for abiogenesis, but like it was still a burgeoning field. Now we have a lot more good evidence for abiogenesis. But even if that wasn't the case, even if we had no idea where life came from, in order to say God must have done it, you first have to demonstrate that there is a God and that it can do that and that it did do that, and then show how that there's a million missing steps here. So for somebody who is, all about, evidence, which I appreciate, his whole life, he was saying, until you have sufficient evidence for God, you shouldn't believe in it. Then all of a sudden at the very end of his life says, I don't have any evidence for not God, therefore it must be God. That sounds kind of fishy to me. And it sounds like, I don't know. That's a crappy argument no matter who says it.
Yeah, and the argument for complexity really kind of ticks me off a little bit, because if you're going to assume an intelligence is designing something, good design is not complex. Good design is simple.
Yep.
And so what we'd actually be looking for would be an argument from simplicity. The universe is so simple, it could only have been designed. Not it's so complex, it could only have been designed. Because the more complex something is, the more likely it is to fail, which is why we have so many systems that shore up just the human body against failure, right? And all the modes of failure. It's why we have 2 lungs and 2 kidneys. We don't have 2 brains, although we probably should for redundancy's sake, but you only need redundancy when you expect failure. And so those are the kinds of things that when they say complexity, it had to be designed. No, we design simple things and then we put them together to make them look complex. But I mean, even the software systems that I work on at Fortune 500 companies, they're complex, but they're also simple because we boil them down into very distinct components. And we're always trying to simplify them and make them easier, and reduce the number of points of failure, or at least shore them up so that we can isolate them and keep them from cascading. And so when you look at human design and you look at design by nature, you find that actually in almost all cases, we do a better job of designing almost everything that makes us human. Eyes, ears. We haven't focused too much on olfactory, but I would suspect that if we put our minds to it, we could do a better job there with olfactory and taste. Pardon?
I said that would be dope. I'm just thinking about like those awesome pH indicators. They're like a little light bulb in a container. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like if you can do that, there's no way you can't make a smelling machine. Like,
right.
How cool would that be? Have an objective, quantitative way to define stink.
Yeah. So yeah, there's, and mechanically, we can actually we are strong enough to tear our own bodies apart. And that would be a failure in design right there. I don't know of an engineering school, a mechanical engineering school that would pass you if you were to design such a thing, or a machine's ability could just tear itself apart. Because you'd put those strength limits below the limits of failure of the components. So it's just, the argument from complexity is just a dumb one from people who don't understand. Shouldn't call it dumb. It's an argument from people who are too ignorant of engineering to know what real good engineering is.
Yeah, there's a million problems with it, and I could talk about it for a long time. But I also, before I move on though, I do want to throw out like, this Christian that you're talking to said that, well, there's this famous atheist that converted to, Christianity or to deism by the end of his life. How many famous Christians have become atheists before they died? And how many of those does this guy know by name? And how many of those would convince this guy that deism is actually inaccurate because a famous deist converted to atheism later on? Like, because I guarantee I have more stories than this guy does of people who have serious problems with religion that deconverted, that talk about the harm and the trauma caused by religion. I can promise you, we can bring a million of those. How many of those would it take for this guy to be like, oh yeah, no shit, you're right. I guess God isn't real. It's just kind of a silly argument all around. But this been us for like 5 or 10 minutes. King, what do you think about all that?
Well, apparently, I agree with everything you say. It's just I'll have to somehow explain it to this friend of mine. But I have a feeling he's not going to accept it because he's a diehard Christian, diehard fundamentalist evangelical Christian. And now that you mentioned, the only other person who I've heard of who supposedly converted from atheism to Christianity is C.S. Lewis.
He was a famous one.
I haven't
He was a
heard
writer.
of anybody else. Yeah, the one who wrote those Narnia stories and
yeah.
And
I
he wrote
think his famous one
letters.
was Mere Christianity was the one that he did, was all about his conversion and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay,
and
well,
it's a big surprise. The arguments that he presents in that book and any of his other stuff are not any kind of interesting, fun, new, exciting, and just the same old.
Okay.
All right, King. Well, thanks.
Enough to thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling in. It was a lot of fun, man.
And before we get to the next caller, Forrest, I'd like to thank you for your Sex and Sensibility video. I have used that extensively. In fact, my only real problem with it is that your entire source list is on the video and not down below.
Yeah,
where
I don't. I really hate that video. I really do. So that was like my first major YouTube thing, and it sucks because of it. I'm banging on the table where the microphone is the whole time, so it's thumping around. I was filming it on a cell phone and then editing it on a cell phone, so the sound quality goes in and out, and it goes in and out of sync. The sources are stupid on the end of the video instead of being throughout the video. There's a million and one problems. I hate that. Also, there's several times where like my language, I know what I was trying to say, but it ends up like if you're not paying attention, like it's kind of fuzzy and it's like, am I saying that? You know what I mean? So like, I really want to remake that video. If I put on Twitter actually a little while ago, like if I ever have like a few weeks to a month free, I really want to remake that because I left a lot of stuff out of it as well that I didn't think would be important. And now that I've been teaching online for 2 years, I see how important it would have been to include. So I hate that video. Thank you so much for complimenting it. I appreciate that. I freaking hate that video.
Well, I appreciate because I have used it many times and copied and pasted it in Twitter stuff. So
if you want better stuff than me, man, I've got a book list I can send your way of just like cool stuff like that
absolutely
a lot of sources that I pulled for that video in several books. Really quick, before we move on to the next thing, hey, do you shop on Amazon? Yeah, you do, because Daddy Bezos owns us all. Next time you do, you can support the ACA at no extra cost to you. Just visit tiny.cc/AmazonSmileACA and designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity. And then Amazon is going to donate a portion of their profit directly to the ACA. You don't pay anything else. They just do that. Also, we have a new channel now that houses all of the shows for the ACA in podcast form. So if you like podcasts, you want to listen to this without seeing me flail all over the place like a lunatic, you can go to tiny.cc/AEN podcast. It's an Atheist Experience network, I'm guessing. I don't know. And there you can listen to all the latest shows in the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen and Truth Wanted and Secular Sexuality and the Nonprofits and others all on one channel. We also have 3 different Facebook groups because we're bougie like that. And they're all run by fans, for fans, and you can interact with them. The first one is the Atheist Experience fan group. That's at tiny.cc/FBAXP. There's also the Atheist Experience private fan group where you can interact with others without having those interactions appear on your public feed. It's really cool if you're still, trying to, hide from your family who's like super oppressive and religious or whatever, or if you're just questioning stuff. And then we also have a new fan group called the Atheist Experience fan group, Atheist versus Theist Debates. Very long title. And you can go there if you want to try out some of your best arguments on theists or atheists alike. So if you want to call in the show and you're not sure if it's like a good argument or bad argument, you go there and you try it out and you tell those people and they'll tell you whether it's good or not. And it's a lot of fun. So all of that is to say, go check out those things. And now with that, because of what you just said a second ago, we're going to jump on to line number 13. I was wondering why you said that, and now I see it. Joshua, pronouns he, him, from North Carolina, calling in to ask, what is the difference between gender and sex? Joshua, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I am awesome, man. So you're just interested in the difference between gender and sex? Do you have a particular thing that you wanted to know more about?
Oh, well, so my confusion is, well, part of me, I believe gender and sex are the same, like for the longest time. And also I just believe it stems from that being that there's only 2 genders biologically. And so I think like and then I think once you get in that idea where gender is some social construct, then I see people like identifying themselves as whatever they want them to be, which I feel like that's kind of madness, or maybe I don't understand something. So I thought I'd call in today for clarification. Yeah.
So forgive me, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Could you please say the very first thing you said? There was a reason why you believe that gender and sex are the same thing. Did you say that was because of your upbringing, or did I mishear you?
Oh no, it was just because of like biological reasons. Okay,
I understand. All right, cool. So sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you on that one. I don't know if it's just like a fuzzy line or whatever. So really quick, I'm just going to give like just a brief rundown, and then I would love to, if you have any specific questions, because I could talk about this for 5 hours, and I don't want to do that to you, man. So a couple of things. First of all, gender and sex are separate things, and here's why. Gender is a biological construct. So I'm getting all twisted over. Sex is a biological construct. And what we mean by that is that biological sex boils down to things like chromosomes, gamete size, hormones, things like that. The way that we actually define sex most of the time in biology is the size of your gametes, your germ cells. If you have lots and lots of small gametes, we call those sperm and we call you a male. If you have very few large gametes, we call those eggs and we call you a female. But there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. So biological sex is just the phenotypic presentation of being male or female. And usually we just stick to those two categories. We'll get into why those don't make sense here in a second. On the other side is gender. Gender is a social construct. Gender is a person's expression of what their biological sex tends to feel like. And even that, what I just said, is really an oversimplification. Gender it's a category assigned to an individual either by themselves or by others based on their behaviors and their cultural practices. It doesn't necessarily coincide with their biological sex. And because it is a social thing, gender can change from person to person, from culture to culture, from generation to generation. Different cultures have different gender norms. Different peoples have different expectations of gender. When you look over just our history for just the past couple of years, there was a time in American history when it was literally illegal for a woman to wear pants. And there was actually a quota. A woman had to have I think 3 or 4 pieces of feminine clothing on at a time or she could be taken to jail. So this was a culturally enforced gender norm. Today, women can walk around wearing whatever they want. If you were to show that to somebody in the 1800s or the early 1900s, they would consider that a form of being like trans. You know what I mean? And so gender and sex are different. Gender is cultural, sex is biological. And the most important thing to remember is that neither one of them are binary. So there are, we talk about something that's binary, something that only comes in exactly 2 exclusive flavors, right? There are only 2 things and you're either one or the other. That's what binary means, right? Well, whether you're talking about chromosomes, whether you're talking about hormones, whether you're talking about genitalia, whether you're talking about gametes, whether you're talking about whatever thing you apply to biological sex, that not a single one of them has 2 exclusive, only 2 categories. They are all fuzzy and gray and weird. And we have 2 general groups, but there's a lot in between and there's a lot on the outside. And with gender being social, I dare you to find anything that's social, that's binary. It's just not how it is. These are, this is something that's deeply personal, something that is someone's internal sense of who they are and how they fit in society. And also, by extension, the society telling them what to do and how to feel and how to act. And so there's that is impossible for that to be a binary system. And so, that's the long and short of it, man. I can go into a lot more detail if you'd like. But I suspect that you probably don't want to because I've been rambling for a long time. Jim, do you have anything to add? And Joshua, do you have any questions?
I'll let Joshua ask his questions if he's got any.
Yes.
All right, so I have one question. So when you said that sex is something more complicated or it's not binary, what exactly do you mean by that? Because how I understand it is binary.
Yeah. So generally speaking, when people talk about biological sex, like 9 times out of 10, they're talking about, a chromosome arrangement. So in your chromosomal makeup, you have 2 types of chromosomes. You have autosomes and allosomes. The allosomes are what we also call the sex chromosomes. Jim, we all heard it, and no one will forgive you forever for not turning off your phone.
Well, the caller was one of the few people that actually can get through through that, and they know better.
But anyway, so when we talk about biological sex, people talk about chromosomes because mammals have what we call X and Y allosomes, right? Not all animals have this arrangement, and not all other organisms have this arrangement. There's a lot of organisms that are monoecious, meaning they only have one biological sex. There's a lot of organisms that are hermaphroditic. There are a lot of organisms that are sequentially hermaphroditic, meaning they start off as one thing and turn into another thing. All shrimp are born male and become female later. Oh my God, dude, I could talk about this forever. But when we're talking about humans, which are not shrimp, we have, X and Y chromosomes. And so people like to say, well, you're either XX or XY. And so you're either a girl or a boy. The difference is Number one, that's not fucking true. There's a lot of other arrangements. You could be XXY, you could be XYY, you could be X and nothing else. There's a lot of arrangements there. Also, there are, when we talk about chromosomes are made of genes. And so individual genes are doing the actual differentiation. Here's a fun fact. Literally every single person watching this has the genes for both testes and ovaries. There's a complicated back and forth switching dance between different genes, turning one off and turning the other on to actually give you the sexual presentation that you have. And those genes can translocate. They can move from one thing to another. So you can have XX chromosomes and have a part of what's called an SRY gene translocate and still have a male phenotype. You'll have a penis and testicles and XX chromosomes. And you can have XY chromosomes and still have a functioning uterus. You can have, I'm going to forget the name of the syndrome off the top of my head, but that's a thing. There's also Sawyer syndrome, where you can have XY chromosomes and be completely phenotypically female. There are even case studies of women with XY chromosomes giving birth to XY babies who are also female. Like, there's a whole thing there. So it's just not as simple as that. It's really fuzzy and really weird because life is fuzzy and weird. And so what you end up with is the situation where you can either try to cram everybody into two boxes and say, I don't care what you say and what you feel and how you are and what your brain says to you. You look like this, so I'm telling you you're this. And that sounds like hell. Or we can just accept the fact that, life is strange and weird and people are who they are, who they say they are. And again, I don't want to sound like an asshole here, but I cannot stress enough just how much I'm leaving out here. The sheer quantity of ways that you can have both male and female chromosomes, and the sheer amount of ways that you can have all this diversity between what's intersex and transgender, which are different things. Like there's just so much to go into here that I couldn't possibly cram it in. But there's a wealth of knowledge here that has been around for the past, I want to say 30 years, really has been developing. And now, at this point, the scientific consensus is that sex and gender are different things. And there's still a pretty hot debate as to what we can actually call binary.
Right. And just to kind of try and simplify it a little bit, intersex people exist. And intersex people exist that have fully formed sets of both genitalia and then everything in between. And if that's the case, then why is it such a hard leap to think that the neural wiring that needs to happen for attraction couldn't also get all messed up too? In the same way, messed up is the wrong word, but could get as confusing as the genitalia being presented. And then obviously it's not that hard. And there are, a number of things that you can look at as well. And one of them, I don't have this marked correctly, but brain feminization requires active repression of masculinization via DNA methylation. That's a study you can go look up and go, oh, wait, in order to have a quote masculine brain, or a feminine brain, you've got to suppress the masculine. Well, suppression doesn't work, is not a binary switch. Right? Because nothing in us is a binary switch. Everything exists on a scale, which is what we would expect if things grew up naturally and didn't have a designer. See previous comments about complexity and engineering. So all that just comes into play. There's a huge amount of research into the neurobiology of sex, and all of it goes to the design is a freaking mess. And so we end up with people on all these weird spectrums in weird places. I think we just need to kind of throw sex and gender out except for medical purposes. And we're all humans, and some of us like some folks and some of us like other folks. And as long as it's all consensual, who gives a flying rat's ass?
It is hard because very often when we talk about this stuff, sex, gender, sexual orientation, pronoun usage, gender expression, all of these things become conflated. And it's really easy. You've almost certainly heard this, Joshua. Somebody will say something like, oh, it's basic biology that this and this and this. And Yeah, totally. But when you study, more advanced stuff, you get into like the details. And so like, it's basic biology to say that, DNA controls your whole body. And that's not fucking true. It's just how we say it when we're, presenting this at the beginning. It's basic physics to say there's 3 states of matter. That's not fucking true. There's a bunch of, it's really way more complicated than that. But it's the way that we present it to people when we're first teaching this stuff. So the fact of the matter is, that every single aspect of your personal identity is different and is fuzzy and weird. And when we talk to, like back in when was it? It was in the 1900s, if I remember right. Being homosexual was illegal in this country, and also it was considered a mental disorder. You read the old DSMs. Psychologists all knew that the science showed that being homosexual was a defect in your brain that caused this mental problem, and people were treated as freaks and perverts and all these things. And then all of the sudden, we did more research on this and found that there's actually natural variation in sexuality. And overnight, all these people were cured of this perceived disorder that they had. We learned that they weren't actually mentally ill. They were just gay, and that's okay. And now we have the same thing, the past couple of decades, things like, being trans or having gender dysphoria and all these things, these were considered serious problems, mental issues. And now we've done more research and we found that actually, no, this is just totally normal variation. And we find that when we actually do brain scans of trans people, their neural architecture matches their gender identity, not their genitalia. And so this isn't just, oh, this guy wants to wear a dress. This is actually a woman. And so like, and then you get into the whole concept of culture there when you talk about, what that means. But it's just a lot more complicated than we like to make it seem. And that's the fact of everything in science. That's not different. That's not unique. That's not special. There is no such thing as basic biology. There just isn't.
Way too complex.
Does that answer your question, Joshua, or is there anything else you wanted to ask us? I know we've been rambling for a long time, but this is a very poignant and important topic, so we want to make sure to give it its proper, diligence.
Oh, no, you did fine. But then I guess another question is, so let's say if you meet someone and they, like you have a medical report of them and they check all the boxes for being a male and they utter that I think I'm a woman, would you expect like to take them seriously? Like, how am I like, you see what I'm saying? Like, I just can't take you seriously just because you said, like, there becomes like this kind of extent of like infinite genders that become from that. You see what I'm saying?
Right. So the difference is because, again, sex and gender are different. If someone comes up to me and says that they're a woman or they're a man or whatever, that is their gender presentation. That is what they are giving to me. That's fine. That has nothing to do with their biological sex. That has nothing to do with their medical history or anything like that. If they're going to a doctor, then that doctor is going to be, the thing that the person that deals with their body, not with their personal identity. If they're going to a therapist, that person's dealing more with their mind and less with their medical history. If they're dealing with me, I'm not a doctor or a therapist. I'm dealing with them as a person. So absolutely, I would take them seriously because, why wouldn't I? Why are you going to walk around and if someone walks up to you and says I'm a girl, you're going to start checking and like prove it, take you to do this and that. Let me measure your neck. Let me how are you going to do that? It's just generally treating people like people, man. Like you look at me, I can tell you my pronouns are he, him. You're not going to tell me, oh, I don't know if I can take you seriously on that. What makes me different than anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh, because I would assume you look like a man.
Yeah, but what if I'm not? How do you know?
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you have the ability to get pregnant?
What if I don't want to tell you? What if I was a woman and I was infertile?
And not all women can get pregnant.
Exactly. What if I was a woman and I had a hysterectomy? Then I would say no. And you would say, oh, you're a man. And you would be wrong.
Yeah. And then there are medical conditions that will prevent a woman from getting pregnant. I'm adopted because my mom can't get pregnant. So what does pregnancy have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty good indicator of someone's ability to get pregnant.
Again.
Well, maybe the better question is, do you have a uterus? That may be a better question to ask.
Again, you could be born without a uterus. You could have a hysterectomy and have your uterus removed. Does this mean you're not a woman?
Yeah.
You can have XY chromosomes and have androgen insensitivity syndrome, and the testosterone that your body produces doesn't have a receptor to bind to, and so you completely 100% develop with a female body, and yet you have XY chromosomes. Does that make you less of a woman or more of a man or anything like that? Or is it just how you feel and what you present as?
Well, I don't know. I'd have to do more research, maybe.
Well, that's the thing. That's all I'm saying is that like this is it all comes down to like if someone lives their whole life as a woman, lives their whole life and they can't get pregnant and they've assumed they're infertile and whatever, and then later on at 80 years old on their deathbed they have a blood test for some reason, they're like, oh fuck, turns out you actually have XY chromosomes, you have androgen sensitivity syndrome, and it turns out do they now have to go back for their whole life and be like, I guess I was a boy the whole time? Does their whole life not matter? Were they crazy the whole time? Like, what does it matter? This is your personal presentation. This is who you are on the inside. This is how you feel. Because again, gender and sex are different. So your gender is your personal representation of who you are in this weird sort of bimodal thing that we call gender. And it has nothing to do with any of the things that you brought up, unfortunately.
And what is the most empathetic way to treat someone who you think is presenting as the wrong gender?
Well, I think it depends on like what we can show biologically. Like
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking what is the most empathetic way to treat someone who you think is not acting correctly, who you think is presenting as something they're not. What's the most empathetic way to treat them?
Like they would like to be treated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's pretty much the long and short of it, bro.
Yeah. Because it doesn't matter, right? Because that's the most important thing we can do is treat each other with as much empathy as possible and as much understanding as possible. Because everything that Forrest and I have been talking about has so far been biology. But there's also a little bit element of psychology in there as well, where if somebody is treated in a certain way, they may develop in certain ways, psychology as defense mechanisms and everything else. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter. If you want to know somebody and understand them, you can only treat them empathetically. And that's the most important thing. The biology doesn't matter. The psychology doesn't matter. Treat them with empathy. That's what matters. Right? Don't get up on a high horse and start being all judgmental. I see there's an A here there. I assume you're an atheist. Don't be a Christian. Don't get judgmental. It doesn't matter. Just treat them with empathy.
Gotcha. I guess that makes sense.
So
I guess how we define it, I guess how we define it is biologically there's a definition of woman, but in a gender social construct, there's a whole other definition where people can subscribe themselves under. Is that correct?
I would challenge it a little bit. I would say there is no biological definition of woman. I say there's a biological definition of female, sure. But like that doesn't always apply to everybody. Woman is a social word. It's often used synonymously, and it's used enough synonymously that you could say what you just said and be fine. But as someone who's really nitpicky, I would say that, woman is a gendered term and female is a biological term, and neither one of them mean what a lot of people think they mean.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, if you have any other questions, I'll take them. If not, I'm gonna bop on to the next caller. But Joshua, is there anything else you wanted to talk about really quick before we move on?
Well, last but not least, I actually want to thank you guys because I was actually a Christian for a long time, like a pious Christian. Like the shit was crazy, but you guys kind of helped me see reason a little bit. Like I still deconverted on my own, but if I had to attribute a group of people that could help me see reason, it'd be the Atheist Experience. So for that, I'm ever grateful.
That means the world, man. We're thrilled to hear that you're free, and we are very happy to have been a part of the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Joshua. Have an awesome day.
You too.
All right.
We have some theists on the line.
Yeah, we do. I want to move on to him really quickly. We had two things really quick. I've got to do the next, thing, the announcement. And then also before I do though, great reading on everything that we just talked about. a friend of mine just did a debate on this, and she actually cited my genetics textbook that I used in college, which was crazy. Genetics, A Conceptual Approach by Benjamin Pierce. Great textbook. Also, if you want to learn more, I encourage everybody to study bioanthropology. This was one of my bioanthropology textbooks. Also, college, this is Anthropology, What Does It Mean to Be Human by Lavanda and Schultz. They have a lot of cool stuff about gender in there. Strongly encourage everybody to look up queer theory and feminist theory and archaeological theory. Strongly encourage, this book's really cool, Evolution and Human Sexual Behavior. This one's awesome. If you want to read that guy, that one's got a lot of details in it. Male Daughters and Female Husbands. This is a discussion of gender and sex in African societies, pre-colonialism, and that's fantastic. The first thing it talks about is differentiating between maleness and actually being a man. And so, like, they're talking about these people that believe in reincarnation. They're like, I would like to come back as a male. I don't want to be a man, though. And the people are like, what do you mean by that? Because they're, always recommend Evolution's Rainbow by Joan Roughgarden. She's a biologist at Stanford. She's fucking fantastic. Like, and I could go on and on. There's a huge amount of literature about this stuff. And if anybody wants to learn about it, like there's so much cool stuff out there to read. And again, anybody who tells you that it's basic biology, that this, that, and the other, probably hasn't taken biology since middle school. So, like, go actually learn what the scientific consensus is. Go learn what people are actually talking about, because the times is changing, and it's wonderful. Science is a great way to unlock advances in human rights. With that, now I'm going to move on to this thing that I have to do. I have to say that's not right. We have a brand new store. That's the thing that I have to say now. Visit tiny.cc/merch ACA to get your favorite items like hoodies, t-shirts, coffee mugs, and whatnot. And also check out our brand new items. We got beanies, we got cell phone cases, we got tote bags. That's cool. And we also feature special limited edition items every single month. So check out the store at least once a month to see what's going on there. Right below the chat, you'll notice that there's also a donate now button. Donations there go straight to the ACA. 100% of the proceeds as you go straight to us. So if you want to spend money and not get a beanie, you can do that. That's pretty cool. And finally, want to send a big thank you to the crew who put this show together every week. The crew is fantastic. They are my favorite people. I love working with them. And every time I tune in, I love traumatizing them with fun biology facts. Today, before the show, we went into great detail about animal parasitology. And I filled the crew in on like 4 or 5 of my favorite parasites. And now they all need therapy, and that makes me very happy. If what I do,
we really do
treated, yeah, it's great, dude. If my effect on people is something that can be treated, I'm not working hard enough. I need to be more fiery. Okay, so now the callers, because we have so many good ones, and I'm looking at number 28. What do you think about that?
Sure.
Cool. We got Frisco, pronouns are he, him, calling in from Arizona. Frisco is a Muslim who believes that signs of God are in plain view. Frisco, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How you doing?
I'm all right. So would you mind please telling me a little bit more about what you mean? You say that what I have here, signs are in plain view for the existence of God. Will you please elaborate on that and tell what you mean?
Well, I've been, checking out your guys' show for a while, man, and I've been wanting to come on, but, I try to be careful, man, with you people, man. But I really want to understand. I'm trying to understand the mind state of an atheist, okay? Because for us as believers, okay, even though I'm a Muslim, that it's not even about that, okay? It's the believers. I represent believers, all religions, okay, that believe in God, that the signs are there, okay? So it's like certain verses in the Quran that says, do you not see how we fold the wings in? Okay. Nothing holds him up except the power of Allah. Okay. So even from birds, the fruit we eat, the day and the night, we made the night so you can rest. We made the day so we put the moon there as a lantern so you can see at night. We put, okay. It's just like everything is so clear to us. And it's like, to us, you people are just walking around blindly, not knowing what you are getting ready to deal with when you enter your grave. Okay. So I'm going to say this and I'm going to see how you respond to this. Okay. So this is what I want to know from you as an atheist. Okay. Now, by making these statements and putting this stuff out there, you have become the worst of human beings, like the Quran says, and we damn sure know who deserve to burn it. And you laughing, you're laughing, but This is the
I
thing.
am left.
What if you're wrong? I'm saying if you're wrong and you enter your grave, and then something surprises you,
Pascal's
you can't
wager.
So really quick, I'm sorry, you said 3 different things that really need to be addressed so far. You said, number one, that everything is so perfect for us that the day's there for us to move and the night's there for us to rest, and that all these things. Then you said that we're the worst of human beings for spreading atheism, and then you also said that if we're wrong, then we're going to go to hell. And those are all really important points. I'd like to address those 3, and then we can move on if you'd like. We can go from there. Quick question, okay? If I had like a funky, weirdly shaped glass, like a vessel for holding liquid, right? And it's all sorts of weird and strange, and it's got all sorts of bumps and ridges all over it. And I were to fill it up with water and then present it to you. Would you believe that this glass must have been perfectly formed for this exact water? Because look, the water is shaped in just the right way to fit perfectly into this glass. Or would you think that I poured some water into the glass and it took the shape of the glass? Which would make more sense?
I mean, these comedic analysis is really kind of
not
getting
comedic.
off the point, because it's so much.
It's not comedic.
Listen,
It's not comedic.
Okay, just listen to what I'm saying. You're making an example of one small thing when there are too many things to consider.
We're not.
What I'm asking you is, I'll skip the analogy. What I'm asking you is, what makes more sense? That we're so star-spangled special, that the entire universe was made around us with all the forces and all the different things all around us? Or does it make more sense to say that we evolved in this universe and all the things around us had an impact on us and we formed to it? Rather than saying I made a glass to hold this shape of water, I poured the water into the glass. Rather than saying the earth was made so special to house us and the night was there so we can rest and the wind's there for the birds and all this stuff. All of these things evolved in this situation. The wind and the night was already there, and we evolved to that.
It's just one big accident. Just one big accident. That's really what you come with.
Who said accident?
That's what you come with.
Who said accident?
Who said accident? Who
No
brought
part
up
of that is
accident?
an accident.
By chance. You want some
No.
by chance. Okay.
No, nothing by
Evolution
chance.
is chance.
On good and evil.
Nothing by chance.
On good and evil.
Evolution isn't chance.
Is it
That's
based
not what
on
we're
good
talking
and
about.
evil? Yeah.
Evolution is the non-random selection of random mutation. That's not chance.
Yeah.
I should say that's natural selection. That's not the definition of evolution. I don't want to call that for
You
that.
are forgetting about the soul. Okay.
No, we're not.
We have
So
no
where
scientific
is the
evidence for a soul.
Can you cite us? Yeah, evidence for the soul.
Because you can't see it, okay? They laughed at you.
No. It's not because we can't see it. It has nothing to do with how we can't see it. It's that we know how the brain works, and there's nothing in the mechanisms of the brain and the biochemistry of the brain that allows for a soul at all, period. End of conversation. There's just no evidence that it exists, and because there's no place for it to interact with the brain, then it seems unlikely for that to happen. So can you show me how a soul interacts with the brain?
The soul continues on after the grave.
That's not what I asked.
What evidence do you have of a soul existing?
That's not what I asked. Where is... we will mute you right now. We're going to mute you right now. You are muted. You are muted. The question is, what is the mechanism for the soul to interact with the biochemistry of the brain? That's the question. Can you answer it?
Okay, this is the answer to your question. Okay, you said, how does the soul interact with the brain? Okay, I am going to use a verse from the Holy Quran that says, we take your souls from your body every night, and then we return them to your bodies.
That's not an answer to the question.
Leaves the body,
that is
and
not.
It goes into dream.
Okay,
in
you're
the
muted
Lord
again.
of the Rings, it says that when the elves die, they go to Valinor. Is that
that's
true?
not an
Because
answer to
it's
the
in
question.
the book.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is pretty
the
much
Quran
what
and the
it boils
Bible are
down
the
to.
claim. The Quran and the Bible are the claim. I'm looking for actual evidence. What is your evidence for the soul interacting with the brain? And I'm looking for biochemistry, neurochemistry, something along those lines. What's your evidence?
I take evidence of the soul existing in the first
my
place.
evidence
That'd be
my
great.
evidence is when a person wakes up and they had one like a terrifying dream. Okay, the soul leaves the body is what you don't seem to understand at night, dude. This is what you people don't understand.
You're
sleep
not
scientists,
providing evidence for a soul. You're making claims. You're making claims that the body has a soul and that soul leaves at night. Did he? Oh, he dropped.
Oh, damn.
Aw.
Well, a couple things. We have sleep scientists that study what the brain does when we sleep, and it's the same fucking thing that it does when we're awake. It just does.
Right.
It just does other. Like it's sorry, as there's nothing there. You have to prove first that a soul exists, and then that something exists to take it away. Like there's so many layers to what you just said. Also, the other two things that he said, we're going to address him even though he's not here. He said that what if we're wrong? And what that we're the worst kinds of people because we're spreading atheism. First of all, what if we're wrong? What if you're wrong about literally any other religion? Pick your favorite. And it's the same thing. Like all the hours of sleep that Frisco doesn't lose over whether or not he's going to go to the Hindu hell or the hell that was taught by whatever, ancient Aboriginal culture of wherever is the exact same amount of sleep that I lose over his. Like it doesn't bother me because I don't think it's real. And what if you're wrong is a ridiculous argument for anything. What if you're wrong about Santa Claus? You don't want to get coal. That's a dumb argument, right? Yeah. So maybe don't use it for God. And then finally, you said that I were the worst kind of person because we're spreading atheism online. Even if you could demonstrate that the God of the Bible or the Quran actually exists, even if you could prove it to me, I would be the first one to say you're right. And I would no longer be an atheist, but I would still be right here on the show telling everybody that that God is not worthy of worship. The God of the Bible, the God of the Quran, the God of these religions is a monster. And if he's real, I am his enemy. And why is it a he all the time anyway? So I'm just fine with that. I don't believe in your God because I have no evidence for it. I don't want it. I have no use for it. It sounds awful. And that's all I need from that, man.
Yeah, and who voted him the guy to speak for all religions, which is one of the first things he said.
I thought it was interesting.
Talk about the arrogance of atheists, right?
Yeah,
no.
I thought it was interesting. You said all religions, and then he said all people who believe in this God. And it's like, but not all religions believe in that one or any. It's like, what? Oh my God, so many confusions, so many confusions. Really quick before we move on, I have an exciting announcement to make to all of you watching. The ACA hosts several shows other than the Atheist Experience. This one's the best, and including the nonprofit and secular sexuality and Truth Wanted and Talk Heathen. And if you didn't catch those shows last week, surprise, we got a little taste of the things you probably want to watch and go look at the code. Here's what you missed from last week.
It doesn't have to go super fast. It doesn't have to go super slow. You can go whatever pace that you want it to be because you don't have to care about another person in the room. It's one of the best parts about masturbation is nobody else is there. Yeah. I can do whatever I want.
I feel like I'm going to put this on and I want to learn about QAnon. And why do I have this? I don't know. But just teach me.
John just put on a cloud nose inexplicably. I think that's a QAnon is what I'm going to call that.
QAnon. Oh.
QAnon.
You don't have freedom from religion. Well, that's right, I don't have freedom from religion. But I still have the right to tell you to f*** off if you're trying to impose it on me, and f*** off if you're trying to impose it on my children. I still have that right.
This water has magic powers now. Does that mean that this water has magic powers just because I said it? Or do we need some other way of verification?
Yeah, well, you need to be a reliable source.
I'm a super reliable source.
Trustworthy.
I'm incredibly trustworthy.
The oceans and all of the rivers on Earth are supposed to turn into blood. Did we miss that?
It has happened. It is happening in China. It's happening in India.
The ocean is turning to blood in China and India? What are you talking about?
What a rowdy bunch of ne'er-do-wells. Hey, if you can arrange to be in the Austin area between November 17th and the 20th, consider joining us in the studio audience at the ACA Free Thought Library for live broadcasts of secular sexuality, Truth Wanted, Talk Heathen, and the Atheist Experience. Doors open at 6 p.m. on Thursday and Friday, at noon on Sunday. Parking is where you can find a legal spot after the lot is full. If you can't make it there this month, we'll continue to broadcast live from the library the last week of every month. So keep watching the show and use our website, atheist-community.org, for more news and more information as we expand for more in-studio offerings in the near future. And here's a fun thing that isn't listed in that stuff. I'll be there. I'm going to do the live show next week. So if you come down to Austin, sit in the studio audience, and you can see me flail around like an a-hole for hours on end, and I'll be right there in front of you. It's what I do. It's going to be great. So come down to Austin and see me. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And be sure to ask Forrest about parasitical biology. So you too can
have nightmares the rest of your life. Yeah. Oh man. So I've got the lines have like filled up. You guys are calling in like crazies. Thank you so much for doing that. I want to take caller number 20. Is that one sound good to you?
Sounds good.
Sweet. So we've got line number 20 is Emmanuel, pronouns are he, him, from Texas, wants to talk about why we can't actually see God. And I believe it says that you are also a theist, Emmanuel. How are you doing today?
Hi.
Awesome. Awesome. So you are a theist and you want to talk about why we can't actually see God. Would you mind elaborating on that, please?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of shows on the Atheist Experience, and they say, why wouldn't God show me, himself? If he is real, why can't I see like an actual proof instead of like, reading a book? They said.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted like to present like an argument that, we should maybe consider that there is a God, but he's not literally interested in us. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Then why worship him?
What?
Then why worship him?
Because of judgment.
If he's not interested in us, why is he judging us?
Oh, by the way, okay, what kind of like, you have to ask me first, what kind of faith.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm not following your script. If he's not interested in us, why is he judging us?
Because unbelief is a sin.
But he's not interested in us, so why does he care?
Yeah, the thing that I want to say is, I'm not saying that he's not interested in each of us. If we are actually like open heart and we are allowing ourselves to believe in him, he will show up. But if we are not interested, he's not interested either.
So just to be clear, not believing in him is a sin that will cause judgment that was very bad for us. Like it was a damnation on the line. That's a problem. But he's not interested in us unless we're interested in him first. So we have to believe in him in order to avoid being punished, but he's not going to go any kind of out of his way to like make sure we believe in him unless we already do. And then he will. Is that about right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a very perfect explanation of what I
the problem.
Say.
You're roboing out a little bit on us, but the problem with that is I was a believer. And he never, ever did anything to prove himself to me. And, I was a Catholic, went to parochial school, did the altar boy thing. I was a pretty diehard believer. So, and he never showed himself to me. So how do you explain that? And how do you explain that to people who were much stronger believers than me, who are now atheists and never claimed to have any direct proof of God?
Oh, okay. So I am a believer also, but he's never showed up, even in my life. You know what I'm saying? I've never seen him.
But you just said that if you're interested in him, he'll show up and prove himself.
No. I said it's like possible or probable. I'm not saying like 100% is going to do it. You know what I'm saying?
What's the probability? Why wouldn't he?
Okay, there are reasons for it.
But what are the reasons? Why?
I
What,
think-
what possible reason? If somebody wants a relationship with you and they never show up, how do you know they want a relationship with you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think the answer might be maybe there's a sin in your life.
Sin in my life. Okay. Your audio is really, really bad, and I'm not sure why. I'm fairly able to understand you, but
okay.
It got bad in the middle of the call, so I don't know if you're moving around in the house and you're somewhere where you don't have good signal and you can kind of go back to where you had good signal. That would be kind of awesome. But I'm not
how
sure
about
what.
now?
Yeah. No. Still sounding like you're underwater.
We'll deal with it. It's like the big thing is like that sounds like an asshole. If this God, if your eternity is dependent on this God showing himself, if the only thing that matters is that you believe in this God, and the only thing that matters is that you believe in this guy, and otherwise you're going to go to hell, you're going to be judged, all these things, shouldn't his top priority be making sure that you already believe in him? If he loves you, if he's a good guy, wouldn't that be really important?
Yeah, why would he prioritize you if he is like king of the universe?
It sounds like he doesn't care at all, or at least he's just very feckless.
That's
like,
my
what if
point.
I had kids? What if I had children and I said I might feed them, but only if they're like really, really nice to me. And if they're not nice to me, then I might not feed them. But if they are nice to me, I still might not feed them. It's kind of just how I'm feeling at the time. Would you consider me to be a good parent?
I don't think you're a good parent.
I wouldn't either. So this God is saying, I'm going to judge you for eternity based on if you believe in me. I'm not going to give you a reason to believe in me. If you really, really believe in me already, I might confirm it, but I might not. But at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to fry for eternity, not me. I'm the king. Who cares? That sounds like a kid with a magnifying glass burning ants. That doesn't sound like a loving God.
Okay, I think there are like two natures of God. So there's like an evil nature and a good nature. I think both things exist at the same time. So I believe that God is like a creator of light and darkness, good and evil. So I think there's like an evil presence in his throne. That's what I think it is.
Okay, so he controls all things. He made everybody just so that he can torture some of them for fun sometimes.
Sounds like a sadistic son of a bitch to me.
No, that's not the argument. The argument is, so let me give you an example. Can I give an example? It will illustrate my point.
Sure. Okay, and then I will give one too.
So an Egyptian king was enslaved Israel people, right? So God hardened his heart, but he punished him anyway. So I think according to scripture, even though God hardened your heart and making you ignorant, he's still going to judge you because he has the power to.
So you're saying that a God who violated free will. So you're saying that a God who's willing to violate free will, which is what he did in the story, and it is just a story because it's not true. We know it didn't happen. At least it didn't happen in the way the Bible says it happened. That entire bit of Exodus didn't happen as far as we can tell from the archaeological evidence. But you're still saying that a God who's willing to violate free will to make a point and just so he can punish somebody is a good person? Is that your argument?
I'm not saying he's the that's not my argument. My argument is who told you that his nature is just good? Because God is good, and he also created darkness.
Right.
Yes.
So your God made certain people just so that he could torture them. He made people for the purpose of causing them pain.
Yes. So I think that's
what an asshole.
I think you got my point.
And why
That's
worship
awful.
somebody like that?
That's awful. That's exactly what we just said in the last caller. Even if you could prove this God is real, I want nothing to do with him.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? if God could judge me, and if He has the power to, why wouldn't I worship Him? It's like if someone had a gun.
Because you
and
can't
he said,
trust Him.
Give me all your money.
Your God can judge you, but his sins far outweigh your own. He is a worse person than you are. So I have I have a way of living. I don't take criticism from anybody that I wouldn't also take advice from. So if some guy who is just a complete piece of shit, who beats his kids, beats his wife, rapes, murders, steals, comes up to me and tells me, hey, I think you should be a better person, I don't care what that guy has to say. So here's this God, right? This God who makes people just so that he can torture them to death and then also punish them forever in hell as well, just for funsies. If that God comes to me and says, you need to be a better person, I'm going to say, fuck you. I don't care what that God has to say for me.
And since that God is willing to torture people just for funsies, how do you know he's going to judge you fairly?
Oh, that's a good question too.
Oh, here's the thing. So our definition of like justice is very different from the ancient text. I think so. So people didn't actually know what justice is. So they just use like the use of the word is really.
Well, we don't know what justice is because your God wants to torture people for funsies.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not saying he does it for fun. I'm saying he has the power to. That's true.
But he does. He creates people and violates their free will just so he can torture them later.
Yeah, you said
we've already established that.
Just to hurt them. He makes people just so that they can be hurt.
So there are conditions that he actually, interfered with, people's free will. Like, for example, when Saul was called, he said, you don't have a choice but to serve me. Acts chapter 9, I think. So what I think is, if God has a judgment upon me, so why wouldn't I submit? So I
can I ask you a couple questions? Can I ask you a couple questions, Emmanuel? I'll ask you three questions, and they're very much yes or no questions. I guess the third one you could be, but very simple. This is not a trap. I'm just genuine questions. Do you believe that hell is real?
Okay. Yes.
Do you believe that anything at all happens that is outside of God's will? Do you think that God controls everything, or do you think that there's stuff that happens that God doesn't want to have happen?
I think everything happens with his will.
Okay, so I'm an atheist. Yeah? If I die right now, I'm going to hell, right?
Yes.
Yes. So God made me. He made the situations in my life that would cause me to become an atheist. He made me who I am. Nothing happens against his will. So when I die, I will go to hell. And even if you want to say, well, I might change my mind someday, there are plenty of people who have died atheists that didn't change their mind. So God made them. He made them atheists, and now he is punishing them in hell for eternity. He made them to go to hell. The purpose of their existence is to go to hell. Why would God make people so that they can suffer, if not for fun?
That's a very good question, by the way. What I will say is, for example, Judas, you remember when Jesus actually gave him a bread, he actually was possessed, and God created even like the devil. He wouldn't kill him because in the book of Revelation, people are not going to be deceived if the devil didn't exist.
You haven't. Why would you have that situation? Again, we can go back to me being a parent. If I was a parent, but I also had this friend who's a child rapist, and I'm not going to ban him from my house because someday down the line, my kids need to choose between me and the rapist. That still makes me fucking crazy, right? That doesn't make me a good dude. So for God to say, I made Satan to torture and hurt you so that eventually you can decide that I'm not that happening, that's fucking nuts, yo. That's not a good dude.
That's why I fear God, because I know how much potential there is, or how much judgment there is.
Yeah, that sounds evil. I would also fear something that's objectively evil. Your God is evil,
That's my point.
Emmanuel.
No, I'm not saying that. First of all, don't put.
I am.
Out. I didn't say that. Okay.
What you've just described is evil.
Okay. Yeah.
Take the exact same thing you just described and put it on me. If I said to you that I had children so that I could torture them. I gave one of them a cookie and then punished him for having a cookie. I let him live his whole life in misery just because I could. Does that make me good?
Yeah. I don't think in that situation you're good, because that's evil.
So what about God? So what about God?
Yeah, but that's a different thing, because he has all the power. That's a different thing.
So power means you're right.
To say,
Might means right. Is that what you just said? Might means right. That's what you just said.
Hey, that's not the thing that I said.
That's
the thing that I said.
Tell us how that's not, please, because that seems a lot like what you said. I don't want to misrepresent you. It sounds like what you just said is because God has power, anything he does is okay.
No, I'm not saying it's okay. What I'm saying is it happens whether you like it or not, right or wrong, okay or not.
That's not what we're asking. We're not saying whether or not it happens. We're asking, is it morally good? Is it good that God tortures people just because?
I don't think it's good.
So then God is doing something bad.
I just told you that God created evil and good in the world.
And it's a crappy excuse. It's a crappy excuse.
Yeah. But,
why worship?
I didn't even get to my point. Okay, let's say you're making a clay, right? So don't you have like the right to break it off?
Making a what?
Let's say you're making a clay.
I'm sorry. I really apologize. I really genuinely can't hear what you said. You're making something and you can break it off?
Yeah. Let's say the property since you made it, can the property actually ask you that?
Oh, so here's the problem with the God made us so he can do whatever he wants with this problem.
Oh, is that what he's saying?
We're sentient and self-aware. We're sentient and self-aware. We have what philosophers call personhood. We are moral agents and we can make decisions for ourselves. And so, no, we don't. He doesn't have the right to do things against our will, right? He has to give us bodily autonomy. He has to recognize that we do have a will and that we do have the right to decide things for ourselves. And he does not have the right to violate that. And this is a problem we're going to have with our own AI. When we get to truly sentient AI, we're going to have the same problem. We don't have the right, because we made them, to turn them into slaves. We don't have the right to violate their autonomy once we create a truly sentient AI. And we're going to have trouble determining that. But no, that does not give him the right. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you use the word slaves as well. Like that's the exact same argument. People, the exact same argument people made in slave days. I own you. I can do what I want. I bred you with these two other slaves. I made this baby on purpose, and therefore I can decide what happens to you. That's not a good argument. It doesn't mean that it's moral.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good thing. What I was saying is he has the potential if he actually exists.
We understand what you're saying. You keep dancing around you keep dancing around one central issue, and that is why worship a capricious God who doesn't obey his own rules, who does things apparently for funsies and because he wants to, that we would consider evil. And we can't, and because he does these things, we can't trust his judgment to be fair, accurate, or right. So why worship?
Yeah, but by the way, I did not say God is evil, because that's like blasphemy, and that's like
that's not an answer to the question.
That's a problem, is what the. Sorry, continue. Answer Jim's question, then I'll talk about that.
Okay, what's the question? I didn't get the question.
Why worship a God who's willing to violate your free will, who acts like a bad parent on multiple occasions, and you can't, and because he does all these things, you can't trust him to judge you fairly?
Yeah.
Why worship that?
Because I just told you, if someone had a gun, even though I don't want to submit, I'll submit because he has power, and that's a very
so what?
Thing.
So what? So the whole thing that you have here, the entire religion is please don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you say. There's no love. There's no generosity. There's no forgiveness. There's nothing. It's just, please don't hurt me.
No, but there are people, I wouldn't say that 100% because there are people who do out of love and there are people who do out of fear.
Not God.
Not God.
God does everything out of fear, apparently.
Yeah.
No, because God does things because he has the power to. And he's going to.
We're not denying that. We're saying, why does that garner worship? If somebody points a gun at you and says, and worship me or die, are you going to worship that person?
No, I'm not going to worship that person.
But you're going to worship God who says the same thing.
Yeah, but I wouldn't worship him because I don't want to go to hell.
Right, so that's
what we just said. Worship me or something bad will happen to you is what we just said. And you said you wouldn't worship a human who did that, but you'll worship a God who says that.
There's a difference. I get the difference. Is that, hell is supposed to be eternal and immortal. If you die here on earth, who cares if you go to heaven and shit? Like, I get that, right? The question is, like, what I really, really, really want to just drive home here is what you keep consistently saying is that you're only worshiping this God for fear of retribution if you don't. Your fear of this God punishing you is the reason why you worship him. Now, obviously, Jim and I don't believe this God is real in the first place, right? That's the point of this whole show. We don't think this is real. But the question isn't, is it real? The question isn't, are we going to worship it? The question that I have is that a good thing to do? Would you take that from anybody else? If the government of the United States comes and says, we have a bunch of nukes, so you're going to give us whatever resources you have, is that moral? If I come to you and have a gun and say, you're going to worship and love me, it doesn't matter if you would. Is it right for me to do? Is it acceptable? I know that you don't want to say God is evil, but I just hope that you can just in your head just understand it for a second. What you're telling us is that you are being bullied into submission. You are being threatened until you behave. That is not good. That's not a loving God. That's not moral. That's not nice. That's not beautiful, wonderful, perfect, anything. It doesn't matter whether somebody can hurt you. The fact that you know they will, and so you terrify so much away from them that you don't want to hurt their feelings, you don't want to even say anything negative against them, that is abuse. That is torture. That is wrong. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand. It makes total sense what you just said. Why?
So then God is evil.
Bro, why I wouldn't say that is because I don't want because for everything that I say, I believe that I will be judged. So I wouldn't say, I would just say God is good. You know what I'm saying?
So just really quick, because I understand what you're saying, Emmanuel. I really do. Okay. I'm not trying to belittle you here.
Yeah.
I really do get it. If you say that, that's a blasphemous thing and you believe you'll be punished for it. Just really quick though, just magic fantasy land. Okay. Imagine I have all the same powers as your God. I'm the exact same in every way. I can do all the things your God can do. And indeed I have my own universe with my own things and I have no control over you. Okay. I am every exact thing that your God is, and I can't hurt you at all. Would you say that I was evil?
No, I wouldn't say that because you have the power to do whatever you want.
Except for you. I can't touch you at all. That's the magic of the scenario. I can do anything I want. I have all the power in the world, except for I can't hurt you.
Oh, if you can't touch me, I wouldn't submit to you. So the only thing that between us and God is there's a judgment. That's the difference. So I would
right. So I just want to be clear. Like I can't touch you. I can't hurt you. Would you say that I was evil if I did all the exact same things?
Yeah. I would say you're a very evil person.
Great.
Yes.
That's all. That's it, man. And I mean this sincerely. I really do.
Okay.
I sincerely hope that you think critically about your beliefs because we don't believe your God is real. We don't think you have a reason to be afraid. I understand you're afraid of this guy. I don't think this guy is real.
Okay.
But what I think is really important for you to understand and for everybody watching to understand is that if it were anybody else, if you take the fear of punishment away, even you could admit that everything this is just evil. It's monstrous. It's bad.
No. But it says that you will be judged if you actually say
right. I get that. I get that. I'm not saying you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks so much for calling in, Emmanuel. We're going to move on to the next call.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care, man. Super important call there.
Yeah,
That
I
at
agree.
the end is so important. I really hope that more theists hear that specifically, because I hope that a lot of people grapple with that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say God is evil because he'll punish me. But if anybody else who couldn't punish me did all the exact same things, I would have no problem absolutely saying that's evil. But God's good. I love him. That's great.
Yep.
What you are seeing there is a fear response. You are seeing someone who is being tortured and harmed and abused into being nice to an abuser. I hope you all learn something from that. Thank you, Emmanuel, for being an example for the class. I sincerely hope that you seriously think about that, because holy fuck, I feel bad for that, dude.
Yeah, really.
Really quick before we wrap up, what would take our last calls here. Oh no, that's it. That's all the announcements I have. I'm a big old dumb. I don't have any more announcements, but we do still have some time left, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Jim, I've picked like the past 2 or 3 calls. You want to pick one?
41 sounds interesting.
I was looking at 41 as well. Okay, so this is James from Ohio, no pronouns given, who wants to say that there is physical evidence of God, specifically talking about archaeologists discovering Sodom and Gomorrah and evidence of other places in the Bible existing. James, how are you today?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm all right.
Doing good.
Never had a bad day. Never had a bad day. So you said that there's physical evidence of God, and you're talking about archaeological evidence of places in the Bible. Is that the exact? Is that synonymous? Are you saying that the archaeological evidence of the Bible is evidence for God, or what do you mean by that?
Yes, sir. There is multiple proof evidence of exact locations that are mentioned in the Bible. For somebody to say that God is false when it was prophesied about these locations, it was prophesied about, the ark. Ark was found. It was prophesied about Jacob's well. It was found. Prophesied about Sodom and Gomorrah. They actually found, with sulfur, it actually, the makeup of it, it was actually found, the location. So these are all true events. If God did not exist, then why are these events there? Why are these places there? That does not make sense.
Let me answer that with a question of my own. Does the fact that Spider-Man takes place in New York and the Spider-Man comics all used real places proof that Spider-Man exists?
Well, here, let me say, no, but here's the thing. So the kind of, as far as Sodom and Gomorrah, what they found, that was not something that man could have made. That was only a supernatural event that God could have done.
That's the claim.
God could have done.
Couple things. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's a couple of things. First of all, I want to make it very clear that the things you've talked about here, as far as Sodom and Gomorrah and the sulfur in the ground, as far as finding the ark and things like this, I have heard these things before. You're not going to believe me, and that's fine. I'm just putting it out there that those things are not true. These are falsified claims by fake archaeologists who are trying to prove the Bible. It's bullshit. These things have not been found, and they're not real. But I just want to get that out of the way. Even if they were, okay, let's say, for example, that these things were real, which, again, can't stress enough how much they're not. If these were real, how would that prove a God and not just prove that a story happened? When the Euphrates River flooded and lots of cultures around that river wrote about a flood story, that's not the same thing as a global flood, even though there was a minor little flood here, right? So if we can find this civilization that had some weird-ass event and the people wrote about it, does that prove the rest of the other crazy claims in the Bible, or does it prove there's some truth to maybe this one story and the rest of it's probably bullshit?
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, I heard part of what you're saying, but the thing is it was more than just one thing. And not only that, but if it wasn't important, if the Bible was never important, why would it have lasted thousands of years?
That's not the claim you're making.
So many people.
We can absolutely address that in a second. I would love to touch about that. Please, before the end of this call, remind me of that, because that's a really important question. But I don't want to go that way right now. I want to stick to what you said in the beginning. Even if we could prove that one or two of the events in the Bible was kind of true, does that prove the rest of the supernatural claims? Take, for example, what Jim said about Spider-Man. if there was an event in a Spider-Man comic where some crazy thing happened at the Chrysler building and this and that and the other, and we can show the buildings there and we can show evidence of these different things, does that make the rest of the comic book true? Like, let's say the comic book referenced 9/11. We have plenty of evidence for 9/11. Does that mean that the comic book is true because it had this event in this place in it?
No, but that's a building, though. That's a building. I mean, there's buildings everywhere.
The city of Sodom and Gomorrah, those are buildings, right? They're just a collection of buildings make a city. So, like, that's the thing is that there's a bunch of claims in the Bible. There's a bunch of claims in the Bible. Even if you could prove one of them, that doesn't do anything to prove the rest of them. It's like saying that, I can prove that Jesus was real, therefore the Bible's real. You have to prove that Jesus is real, and you have to prove that he actually did the miracles, and you have to prove that he raised from the dead, and you have to prove that there is a God for him to be the son of, and you have to prove that he's the son of that God. There's a million things here. Even if you could prove Jesus is real, your work is still cut out for you. So with this, if you could prove that the ark was there, if you could prove that Sodom and Gomorrah was there and there's sulfur in the ground, if you could prove this well existed, radical. You haven't proven the other 10 billion things that the Bible says is true.
So as far as the archaeological part of it, the Noah's Ark was actually, they measured it.
Well, so here's the thing. We're going to grant you, we're going to grant you that the archaeology is correct and they have found these things. How does that prove anything else in the Bible is true? Are you familiar with the genre historical fiction?
Okay, yeah, but real quick. So you're asking me a question that you should know the answer to, because you're saying, how does it prove it's real? Because it's physical evidence of it being real.
No, So historical fiction is fiction that uses historical places, historical people to tell an entirely fictional story. And sometimes that fiction is like Louis L'Amour is a great example of historical fiction. He uses real places and he even mentions real people, but it's entirely 100% fictional. He also did a really good book called The Walking Drum, which I think is probably the greatest example of historical fiction because it covers it almost all the way to China. But that's the best you can do is historical fiction.
Right, but let me add on to what you're saying, though. I've never heard of that person you're talking about, and there's a lot of people that haven't, and there's a reason why. It's because it's fake. The reason why a lot of people...
Louis L'Amour is one of the most famous... But again,
witnesses to it.
Again, I can go and point out where there are dozens, if not hundreds of witnesses to a gunfight that never happened. What does that mean in a historical fiction book? A book that combines both history and fiction. What does it mean that there are witnesses?
Yeah. The Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, that movie that came out, I think it was a book too. It had all the actual events of Abe Lincoln's presidency. Does that mean that vampires are real? Everybody's heard of Abe Lincoln.
No.
Does that prove for vampires?
But we know vampires aren't real.
How do you know? It's right there in the book about Abraham Lincoln. It says it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that wasn't the story in the beginning of Abraham Lincoln. That was never the beginning of Abraham Lincoln. It wasn't ever about vampires.
It's the secret records. It's the secret records because the government covered it all up.
The Bible was also not all assembled at once either. The Bible was put together over a long period of time, was over several decades, even a couple of centuries for some of it. Like, it wasn't the original story either. There was a whole council about what to put in and what to leave out. How can you say that this is proof of anything?
Well, because I was referring to the physical evidence of it, of the different locations.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the physical evidence, first of all, again, can't stress this enough. Those are not true things. Those are bullshit lies. But even if they were real, if you proved for sure that there was a big ass boat that specifically was what it said in the Bible would be, that doesn't prove anything about a flood. Maybe they just built a fucking boat. That doesn't prove anything about Jesus raising from the dead. It doesn't prove anything about Adam and Eve. It doesn't prove anything about the Tower of Babel. None of the other things are proved by the existence of a big ass boat in the desert. That doesn't do anything for us. You have physical evidence of one claim, not of the whole thing.
So then why are the measurements exactly what they measured then?
Because they wrote it down and they put it in the storybook, dude. Why does Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter have the actual dates of Abe Lincoln's presidency? Because that's a thing that happened and they wrote it down. And then they made a story about it.
Right.
Somebody built a big ass boat. They wrote down how big the boat was. And then they were like, and then they put two of every animal on there and they didn't eat each other somehow. And that's the story.
So thousands of years ago, so why would millions of people make up a story for what? What would be their purpose? And everybody.
Now we're on to something. So
why would somebody?
We wanted to come back to this, and now we have. Now's a good time for it. I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best explanation for the fact that the Bible is believed by millions of people all over the world? Do you think that it's more likely that millions of people believe in the Bible because it is true? Or do you think that it's more likely that millions of people believe in the Bible because it became the official state-mandated religion of Rome and then the official state-mandated religion of other places like England, and that colonization happened across the world and people demolished other cultures, deliberately committed genocide, exterminated people, forced them to convert to Christianity on pain of torture and death, and now, because of that history, which we have a huge amount of documentation of, we now have a bunch of Christians in the world because their parents were Christian and raised them to be Christian. Which one of those makes more sense?
Well, so basically, the thing that but here's what I'm trying to say though: people have actually twisted the original word, and
that's not an answer to the question.
You're not answering my question. You said that millions of people believe in this Bible. Millions of people believe that it's real.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, is it more reasonable to say that millions of people believe in it because it's true, or is it more reasonable to say that the documented history that we have of people coming across the world and forcing people to convert to Christianity or be tortured to death, do you think that has more to do with it than the actual historicity of the Bible?
I hear your question, but you have to understand too, though, that Christians and people that believed in God were martyred and they were killed for their belief, though, too.
For sure they were.
It goes
but
both
I
ways.
guarantee
it goes both ways,
compare
man.
the list
That's
of
the
people
thing.
who died because they believe in God and the people who died because they were put to death for not believing in God. I can tell you for sure that second list is longer. So yes, lots of people have died for your religion.
How do you know that? How do you know that? Were you there? Were you there?
Because we have historical documentation of it, dude.
Were you there?
I have things that I would have died for as well. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily true. It means that I believe in them sincerely. So yes, people sincerely believed in your religion. Nobody's arguing that. But also, your religion was forced upon millions of people. People were murdered for not believing in a religion. People were tortured for not believing in a religion. The Crusades happened. The Inquisition happened. Manifest Destiny happened. Lots of things happened that forced people to believe this. So yeah, some people did sincerely believe it. Radical. But do you really think that's the actual main reason that it spread?
I think it could be a little of both. But the thing is, though,
a very small smidget one and a whole bunch of the other.
Have you ever considered that the reason why there was crusaders and people like that is because they were being attacked for their religion first? Have you ever considered that?
No, that's not really even on topic.
That's not what the evidence shows. There's no reason to believe that because that's not what the evidence shows.
A man's evidence?
Yeah, the historical written records of the people at that time. The Pope who went out and said, if you kill enough heretics, you get to heaven no matter what you do. You have absolution. And especially also, if you murder a lot of women and children, you get to go to heaven. That probably has more to do with it.
Well, I'm going to bring up, sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to bring up that last guy you were talking to. The one guy the guy that's with you there was talking about how God, you're forced to believe or else you're going to go to hell. But the thing is the Bible makes it really clear that people have their own free will. Right now, we're all breathing and we're living life, and we have our own free will. It's not
except for when we don't, because in the Bible there are several times when God takes away someone's free will to force them to do things that they will be punished for later.
Yeah.
Right. When the Pharaoh had the Jews held prisoner as slaves, and then he says several times over the book of Exodus, the Pharaoh wanted to let the Jews go, but God hardened his heart so that he wouldn't let them go. And then God did another plague. So God just forcefully hardened his heart and made him not do something compassionate so that he could show his dick and make more plagues happen.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this. So if you were going to do something because you knew the end plan was greater and that you were going to have life in the end instead of death, what would you choose? Would you die to have a better life, eternal life, or would you die so you could go to hell? Would you rather go to hell?
Pascal's wager.
Yeah, that's
and we've already answered that question.
That's the first call that we took.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what so there's some problems with Pascal's wager, right? The first is you need to prove that your God is the correct God, because if the correct gods are any other pantheon, then my understanding is the Norse pantheons and the Egyptian pantheons don't care if you believe them or not. So not believing in them doesn't do anything for us. But also, what happens if the real God is a perverse God, and he will only reward people who don't believe in any God, including him?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. What if that is the real God?
So you still are left with proving that your God is the correct God. And then you need to prove that his way is correct and that he's worthy of worship. And we've already addressed the fact that your God is a narcissistic abuser at best and a serious monster at worst, and therefore not worthy of worship. So you still have all of your evidence to go, and you've got a lot of work to go before you can convince myself, or I believe Forrest, I don't want to put words in his mouth, that your God exists and that he's worthy of worship.
Not to mention the fact that if this God is real and all-knowing and all-powerful, do you really think you're going to fucking pull the wool over his eyes and be like, well, I technically believed, so you have to reward me? Like, no, that sucks. Not like this. It's just, there's so many things wrong with that, like that statement that makes no sense at all.
Okay, but the things in the Bible were prophesied and they happen today. Don't you see what people are doing, how people act?
There's lots of other religions that have lots of other prophecies that they claim happen today.
Like what? More clear than the Bible?
Okay, so let's play a game then. What is the best? What's the most convincing prophecy in the Bible that is coming true today that you can point us to?
Well, there is a lot of them, but it would be the fact that people have turned to people have turned to be lovers of themselves and to false idols.
Okay.
And
now
that's
I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me one time in the entire history of civilization over the past 2,000 years since the Bible was written when you couldn't have said that.
What was the question again?
What is one time over the entire last 2,000 years since the time of Jesus, the entire history here that you have 2,000 years to work with, when is one time when you could not say that, look, people are starting to love themselves and false idols and things like that? When could you not have said what you just said as a fulfilled prophecy any time in the last 2,000 years?
Well, it started in biblical times.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Yes. Yeah. So at any time, between the Bible being written and now, you could have said, look, the prophecy's coming true. So that's a shit prophecy, right? If it's any time between 2,000 years, maybe also 2,000 years in the future, we can say the exact same thing and it means the exact same thing. That's a shitty prophecy. If I tell you I have a prophecy that someday someone will eat a sandwich, can you now point to any random dude and say, he's eating a sandwich, the prophecy's true? Or is that just shit that happens all the time anyway?
That's a simple topic you're bringing up, though. That's something that people do
and
every
so
day.
Is people worshiping themselves and idols. It's a simple topic that always happens.
But it wasn't like that at first.
Can say that. Prove it. Prove it. Where's your evidence that people didn't used to do that?
Well, obviously I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know exactly. But
and you also weren't there when a minute ago. Crusades happened and the Spanish Inquisition happened, and you said you weren't there. So why does that work for you but not for me?
And you weren't there when Jesus Christ was walking around.
That's true. You weren't there for Jesus.
So how do you know it's true? You didn't see it. I mean, come on. If you're going to use that argument, be consistent.
Where do you think you came from? How'd you get here?
My parents.
Who was your creator?
My parents had sex.
Where'd your parents?
Yeah.
Where'd your parents come from?
They also had parents, surprisingly enough. Are you asking where life came from or where humans came from? Where are you trying to go here?
Yeah, exactly. Where life come from?
Abiogenesis.
Don't try to don't try to say we're like an animal. Don't try to say we're like an animal because that's not true. We didn't come from.
It is.
You don't think that humans are animals?
No, animals are on a whole different level. They have a different mind. They don't do what humans do.
We move too much
They
to
don't
be
talk like
plants, and we're too big to be bacteria. So what are we, if not animals?
We have.
Do you know what the definition of an animal is?
What's that?
The definition of an
think it's
animal
human?
is a living thing, an organism that is usually motile, lacks cell walls, is heterotrophic. Those are all things
You
that
think we came
humans
from a
are, it
monkey?
turns out.
You
So
think we came
I
from
actually am
monkeys?
a biologist with multiple degrees in biology, and I specifically study evolution. So yeah, evolution is
Sir,
real.
I have a question for you. Okay,
Go
let me.
for it.
I have a really good question.
I'm
for
sure
you.
this won't be a
If we
straw man
came
at all.
From monkeys. If we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Why is there?
You came from
monkeys?
Sorry, hold on. No, just have to
Sorry.
ask you, man.
That doesn't even make sense.
If you came from your parents, how do you still have a brother?
No, it doesn't make sense. How is it? No, I asked you a question. Can you answer it? If we came from a monkey and we evolved into something greater than a monkey, why is there still monkeys? Why is there still chimpanzees?
I have to ask.
And why are we
I have
people?
to ask. Greg, or James, sorry, I apologize. I have Greg over here on the other side. James, I'm going to ask you a sincere question. I mean this. I really genuinely do. I'm not trying to fuck with you. Are you being serious right now?
You didn't answer my question.
I promise I will. I just need to understand who I'm talking to. Are you fucking with me, or do you genuinely think that that's a serious question about evolution?
That's a very simple, serious question that you
Okay.
seem like you don't have the answer to.
No, I promise I do. I just wanted to know how
Okay,
to handle this, because if you're being serious, then I'm going to handle it totally differently. I'm actually going to explain it. But I need you to understand first that that is a remarkably simple question about evolution. And it shows me, and I don't mean this to be offensively. I mean this, like, please understand, this sounds shitty, but you are seriously don't understand the first thing about evolution if you can ask that question. So I'm going to start from the beginning to try to make it make sense. But like, I promise you, I'm not trying to talk down to you or anything like that. I just need you to understand that that is I need you, because I assume you probably heard that from somebody else. And the person who told you that was fucking you over. Like that, you need to know that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so like, here's how it is. Okay. Here's what this actually is that the monkeys and apes and things that are around us today are not our ancestors. They are our cousins. So if you go back, say, for example, with chimpanzees, right? When we look at the fossil record, we find that our common ancestor with chimpanzees lived about 7 to 9 million years ago. That was an animal that was not a chimpanzee and was not a human. It was a totally different thing. More likely, it was an animal called Sahelanthropus, but you know, we're kind of, but whatever. So here's this animal here. Its descendants over the next 7 million years would then branch off and become animals like humans, chimpanzees, and bonobos. So when you look at life today, all the animals and plants and everything alive today, not a single thing alive today came from anything else alive today. That's not what evolution is. That's not how it works. The definition, the actual textbook definition of evolution, is any change in the heritable characteristics of a population over multiple generations. That is something that is beyond proven, completely unquestionably proven. Now, when we look at the fossil record and we see where we as humans came from, okay? As a grad student, I studied bioanthropology, the evolution and biology of humans, okay? We have a huge fossil record, a huge amount of evidence showing where we came from. And it's not the monkeys that are around today. So when you ask what I said a minute ago, when you ask why are there still monkeys, it's as if I asked, I have a brother. If I came from my parents, then how do I have a brother? It's the exact same thing. We came from totally different animals. And now we and chimpanzees are cousins that are closely related. We share that ancestor, but we didn't come from chimpanzees. We didn't come from any of the monkeys around today. That's the answer to your question. That's what that actually is.
Okay, I hear you on that. But the thing is if we came from that monkey, the human-like creature you're talking about, then where's that creature at?
They're extinct.
No.
They went extinct. So like this is the process where you have like the whole point of evolution is selection pressure. You're meeting the requirement of your environment, right? So those animals changed over successive generations. Little by little, they changed. And some of them fit into the niche, into the little habitat of being a chimpanzee. And some of them fit better in a different niche and slowly went human-wise. And everybody before you changed. So again, just to make it clear, saying where are those animals is like saying, if I came from my grandparents, why are my grandparents dead, right? They are not me. They are a totally different group. So Sahelanthropus, the probable most likely common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees, they died millions and millions and millions of years ago. And then next thing, and to be very clear, I want to be, one thing that's kind of tough for people to wrap their heads around, but it's really important to understand, especially when you're first learning about evolution, is that the concept of species is bullshit. It's made up. There's no cut line, right? So it's not like, our ancestors, there's one species called Homo habilis. There was never a time when all of the Homo habilis gave birth to Homo erectus and then they all died, right? That didn't work that way. It's a slow change. And what we're doing is we're just drawing a line and saying, this is now what we're going to call a new species. If you had every single skeleton, if you had my skeleton, my parents, their parents, their parents, their parents, all the way back 4.5 million years to Ardipithecus ramidus, right? If you have all of these perfect skeletons lined up, there's not a single part where you can point at and say that's now a human and everything else isn't a human. That's, it's just a species is a totally arbitrary box that we draw around a group of individuals in a population. We say this is what this is.
So you think this is it? This is our you think this is our final form? What we are now, or are we going to evolve into something else?
No, nope. Because evolution shows, like when we study evolution, it's very clear that as long as there's reproduction, there's going to be evolution. As long as you're reproducing, making more copies, there's always going to be evolution. So what happens a lot of times when people don't know a lot about evolution, when they haven't learned about it, they'll have this model in their head that we call orthogenesis. And orthogenesis literally means like upright creation is basically what it translates to. It means that evolution has a goal in mind, that humans are the most evolved thing, that we're the pinnacle of evolution. And that's not true. Evolution is not a ladder. We evolved the way we did because of the selection pressures of the environment around us. And selection pressure is just a word for saying like, if you do this, you die. If you don't do that, you die. It's the rules of the game for living, basically. You know what I mean? So selection pressure is anything like predators, carbon dioxide concentration, access to food and water, anything that allows you to live and reproduce, right? So the reason why we evolved the way that we did, and the reason why chimpanzees evolved the way that they did, and the reason why sponges evolved the way that they did, and all these other things is just because it fit properly into their environment. That's what we mean by survival of the fittest. It doesn't mean strongest. It means you're able to meet the requirement of the environment that you live in. Like a puzzle piece fitting into place. And so we, as long as we're still reproducing, will continue to evolve. And we already see trends in our evolutionary history. We don't know what we're going to turn into next, quote, because again, that's bullshit. Species doesn't really work that way. But we already see humans are getting taller and taller because we have more consistent access to nutrition. We're getting bigger and bigger heads because we have cesarean sections and you don't have to fit a watermelon out of a cervix the size of a quarter anymore, right? And we're seeing these trends in our evolution based on the selection pressures that are still acting on us today. Differential reproductive and survival success is all that is. So yeah, this is not the end of our evolution unless we all die, and then it will be.
Well, so do you believe in the Big Bang then?
So the Big Bang is another thing that we have a huge amount of evidence proving. And I want to be very clear. That's another thing that a lot of times gets twisted up and made into bullshit. The term Big Bang was actually that word was coined as a joke. It's not like Big Bang is such a misleading. I must prefer the term everywhere stretch because that's what it actually is. There was no explosion in space that made the world. That's not what the Big Bang actually says. But you can actually, find really like the most basic evidence of this happened with this guy named Hubble. He was an astronomer and astrophysicist. And basically what happened was we're looking out in the universe around us and we see all these galaxies are moving apart from each other. And based on what we call redshifting, we can tell how fast they're moving apart from each other. And so we're like, okay, well, first of all, if they're all moving away from each other, then it stands to reason they were all in one place at one time, right? And then also we notice that the farther away they are, the faster they're expanding. And you can plot this on a line. You get this really cool slope that we call Hubble's constant. And you can plug that in, you get Hubble's law, and you can literally, like, I did a video on my YouTube channel about this if you want to watch, or even call back in next week. Well, I'll be back on the show. I'll be happy to talk about this more. I'm going on for way too long, but like, you can literally do like basic algebra and you come up with a number for the age of the universe. And the more data we collect from the galaxies around us, the more concise that number gets. And it comes out around to 13.8 billion years over and over and over and over again. And so it shows us that at one point, 13.8 billion years ago, all matter and all space would have been condensed into one point. And that is where we get this concept of a Big Bang. But again, I am grossly oversimplifying all of that. So if any of that sounds a little bit funny, feel free to call me out on it. I'll go into it next week if you want to call back.
Oh, understandable. But I mean, but you can see how, I mean, I get it. You don't believe what I believe. I respect that.
Yeah.
But you can get how, even from my view, I would think that your philosophy and what you think is nonsense though, too. You know what I mean? Based off, because it's like,
dude,
well, I mean, it's like, well, how did this all
on the
start
street?
If
somebody walked up to me on the street as a child and told me about the Big Bang and evolution, I would have thought they were crazy because it sounds like a fucking fairy tale. It does. It's mind blowing. The difference is, and this is what's really important, is that the vast preponderance of evidence supports these things. This is not just a thing where like somebody thought it was kind of a fun idea and we wrote it down and we all agreed to say it. This is something that has changed a million times. I mean, evolution, just the story of like how we came to understand what fossils are. Like the idea of extinction was fucking earth-shattering. It completely changed the world of science. And that's the same thing with evolution as a whole. Same thing with the Big Bang. Same thing. Did you know plate tectonics is a theory that was only accepted in the 1960s? There were huge debates as to whether or not to teach plate tectonics in school. But the evidence showed that that's real. And so we went with it. And that's the same thing. If you told me as a child that all the land masses on Earth are like islands floating on a sea of lava moving around, I would think that was crazy. But that's what the evidence has shown us. And again and again and again, the evidence comes back the same way. Evolution, the Big Bang, all these things, they have a million chances to be wrong, and they keep coming back right. And so this is not a philosophy or a belief system. This is the only philosophy here is that I follow the evidence wherever it leads, no matter what, even if I don't like it. And the evidence shows that these things are real. That's why I became a scientist. I wanted to know what was real, and I didn't want to be baffled by bullshit. And so that's what science is all about.
All right. And when we ask theists like you to provide evidence for things like souls, for resurrection, for any supernatural claim, whether you're, doesn't matter what type of theist you are, we ask for evidence for supernatural claims, and we get things that are at best unexplained so far, right? When you ask us how abiogenesis works or how any of these things work, we can actually show you the mechanisms and the methods and the evidence to do it. And that's all we're asking for is the same courtesy. Show us the experiment that shows that prayer works. Because Mayo Clinic and a theist organization, I forget which one, or a Christian organization,
Templeton Foundation, I believe.
Templeton Foundation, have both done separate studies on the intervention of prayer on medical outcomes and have shown that it's no better than the rate of chance, which means it has no effect whatsoever. Prayer has no effect on medical outcomes of people.
It actually sometimes has a worse outcome. If people know they're being prayed for and they don't get better, they feel bad, and it actually makes them sicker.
Yeah.
Kind of weird.
Yeah. And that's just to say that in this one case, right, medical intervention, prayer doesn't work. That's not to say that prayer doesn't work everywhere, but at least show us the evidence for that. Show us what that is. And if prayer doesn't work because those people aren't Christian enough, prove that. If there's something they're doing wrong in their prayer, show us that. Right. So even the fact that the statistics don't show it doesn't mean that prayer doesn't work. It just means that all the ways that those people were praying weren't working.
Right. That's a whole other claim now. Yeah. So like that's what we were talking about at the beginning. We were talking about things in the Bible. Even if you could prove this one part of the Bible, you still have to prove the rest of it. And that's the same thing with me. Like I can abiogenesis is what we've talked about a few times. Abiogenesis is life coming from non-life. That's the process that life starts, right? Obviously, we've never seen that happen. We've never once looked at the common creationist thing that I hear a lot is like open a jar of peanut butter and find new life or whatever like that. So like we've never seen life come from non-life, but we have proven over and over that all of the building blocks of life can form by totally natural processes all on their own, and they don't need any kind of intervention. And we've shown that they're able to combine all on their own without any intervention. And we're shown that life itself, as it's working, is just following basic laws of physics and chemistry and doesn't need any intervention. And so we can put those pieces together and come up with the idea that it's more than likely that life can start by itself. And until we see evidence that there is something creating life, we have no reason to think that that thing exists. You know what I mean? So like that's the whole thing, man, is that like with science and with evidence, like you don't have to watch something happen to know it's true. It's just like a murder trial. I don't want to go to a murder trial and have somebody say, well, I didn't see him murder somebody, so I guess it didn't happen. We can say, oh, here's footprints and here's fingerprints and here's a motive and here's a video and here's the evidence builds up and shows us what's up. And so that's all that this is all about. When we talk about all these scientific principles, like it's not just a wild guess or a worldview. It's something that we actually have a reason to believe in.
Right. And even if you could prove every natural occurrence in the Bible is true, you're still left with all the supernatural elements that still need to be proven.
Exactly.
Right. And that still needs to be proven. And that's what we're asking evidence for, is for that supernatural.
Yeah. And we've been talking for a long time, James. What do you think about all that? Do you have anything? Because we're way over time. So like, do you have any thoughts on everything that we just said? Any final questions for us?
Well, I just like everybody consider, it makes more sense to believe, we're all going to die. So, it's like, it makes more sense to believe. Wouldn't you rather believe you're going to go somewhere greater than you're just going to go in the ground and be nothing? I mean,
follow-up question on that. Does it matter?
You know what I mean?
Does it matter what you believe, or does it matter what's real? Does it matter what you believe, or does it matter what's real? That's my question.
They both matter.
Right, but like at the end of the day, would you rather believe something that's true or something that's not? Does it matter to you that your beliefs are true? Is I guess the question.
I would rather die believing that I'm going to go somewhere good eternally than die and just go in the ground and be a nothing.
So even if heaven wasn't real, and even if there is no God, and even if you do die and go in the ground and there's nothing, you'd rather just assume that something else is real because it's just nicer?
Wouldn't you?
No.
That is actually the fundamental difference between our beliefs.
Right.
Is that I would rather believe something is true even if it's painful.
And the reason for me is that I would be very afraid of being turned into a monster. I'd be very, very afraid of not treating the LGBTQIA community with the empathy they deserve because they're human beings. I would be worried about making judgments about people that are not based on reality and who they are, and simply what they believe or not. And there are a number of other things that we can go into on another call because we are way over time.
Yeah, sorry, I've been rambling for a while.
No,
that's commands were pretty simple, and people, they didn't obey them, and that's where we are. You know what I mean? So,
I'd say
God's commands aren't that simple.
Yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
They weren't supposed to be hard. They weren't supposed to be hard.
Would you like to, if you want to go into more of this, like we've got to end because we got people waiting on us, but like, would you be cool with calling in next week as well? Because I'm going to be in the studio live next week. I'd love to hash out a little bit more of that with you.
I'll tell you what, you give me a call. How's that?
I don't think I can. We don't have a call out feature.
Yeah, but, we don't call out. Sorry.
If you don't want to, it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right. Hey, it was nice talking to you, and you guys take care. All right, be well.
All right, you too.
Take care, James.
Thanks.
See you later, man.
Bye.
And I can also say, unironically, although I don't know I'm supposed to, but like I have a whole ass YouTube channel dedicated to tearing apart creationist claims from a biological standpoint. It is spicy and mean sometimes, so it may not be up everybody's alley. But I've got a new series that I'm doing that's not so confrontational. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. And if James, if you're still listening, if you don't want to call in, that's fine. I hope somebody else calls in and asks it, because that was what you were getting into, was other really good questions that I would love to tear apart. Thanks so much for being here today, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Please visit our website at atheist-community.org for the latest on what's been happening. Feel free to contact us at tv@atheist-community.org. Jim, it is always a pleasure hosting the show with you.
A lot of fun. I wish I was going to be there at the end of the month or next week with you in studio, because that's going to be a hoot.
I don't know who's hosting with me, but like, watch the thing and tune in, because it's going to be radical, everybody. And with that, I've kept you all here for almost 10 minutes too long with my nonsense, so I'm going to wrap up quickly. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day and never stop learning. Bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242, or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.